Shedur's looking high-level quarterback.
I know Shedur's going to get us in the right spot. I know he's going to go where he's supposed to be with the ball.
Day one of training camp. That's all it took. Shedeur Sanders walks into Cleveland Browns camp and every single doubter in the comments section just got quiet. No more off-season chatter. No more he's not ready talk. Just football. And what showed up on tape has people who watch this stuff for a living saying the quiet part out loud. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why the noise around Shadur just changed. Let's set the scene. Training camp is officially underway in Cleveland, and this is the moment everybody's been waiting on since the offseason wrapped up. Shedeur Sanders spent the last few months doing the media rounds, interviews here, appearances there, all the noise that comes with being one of the most talked about young players in the league. But that part is done now. It's autopilot mode. It's strictly business from here on out, and the only thing that matters is what happens between the white lines. And on day one, Shedeur didn't waste any time reminding people why he was worth all that attention in the first place. He looked good, not flashy for a highlight reel good, high-level quarterback good, the kind of good where you watch the reps and you start asking yourself why anybody was doubting this guy to begin with. Now let's be real about the situation in Cleveland, because context matters here. The Browns have not officially named a starter. They're not going to stand up at a podium and hand the job to anybody in July. But everybody who follows this team knows the expectation coming into camp was that Deshaun Watson is the presumed guy, at least on paper. That's the storyline. That's what's been written since the offseason. Shedeur Sanders is the one chasing the job, not the one holding it. Except day one didn't really look like a guy who's chasing anything. It looked like a guy who showed up ready to make this a real competition, not a formality. And that's exactly the kind of tape that gets people in the building talking. Not because anybody's making a decision off one practice. Nobody's naming a starter after day one of camp. But first impressions matter, and first impressions set the tone for how a competition gets covered, how it gets talked about, and how much benefit of the doubt a guy gets going forward. So before we get into what the analysts are actually saying about this, because there's a specific breakdown from CBS Sports that lays out exactly what Shadur needs to do to win this job, let's look at the actual footage from day one, because seeing it yourself is going to explain a lot about why the tone around this competition just shifted.
This is the footage that has been released. As you guys can see, both guys is back in the building for the Cleveland Browns. Shedeur Sanders, like I stated, is making a run to, let's just say, win this starting position from Deshaun Watson. It's him and Harold Fanikin Jr. coming out there. And yeah, here's another clip from today. The get it. So as you guys see, it looked like they just rocking out with the helmets for now. Hopefully by the end of the week.
Hold on right there, because what CBS Sports said about this exact situation is where this story gets real interesting. CBS Sports put out a breakdown of the Browns quarterback situation, and it did not read like a puff piece. It reads like an honest assessment of what it actually takes to win a starting job in the modern NFL. And the framing was direct. No knock on Deshaun. The guy is coming off 2 Achilles surgeries. Before that, he was a Pro Bowler. He kept the Houston Texans in playoff contention multiple years in a row. That's real production, real history, and nobody's erasing that. But here's the part that matters for Shadur. The analysis pointed directly at him and said, if you can show early in this camp that you've made a real jump, not from last year to this year in general, but specifically from year 1 to year 2, entering camp under a brand new coaching staff with Todd Monken calling the shots, that jump is going to get noticed. And it's not just about the stat sheet, it's about the huddle. It's about 10 other grown men looking at you before snap and knowing, without a doubt, that you're going to put them in the right spot, that you're going to go where the ball's supposed to go. That's the kind of trust that gets built in exactly these moments, in exactly this camp. And then, CBS dropped a line that's been floating around the league for years from Mike McCarthy, who Shedur's own quarterback room has probably heard a version of already. If you've got 2 quarterbacks, you've got none. That's the blunt truth of where Cleveland sits right now. They've got a couple weeks to figure out who their guy actually is, or they risk being right back in this same spot, same questions, same uncertainty, this time next year. That's not a hit piece on Shadur. If anything, it's the opposite. It's a national outlet laying out exactly what the path looks like and pointing out that day one already gave people a reason to believe he's walking that path. The doubters wanted a specific kind of story out of this camp. They wanted raw rookie still finding his footing. What they got instead was a guy operating like he's already got the huddle's trust on day one with a brand new coaching staff watching every single rep. So what does the head coach himself actually think about all this? Because Todd Monken sat down and talked about exactly this quarterback situation, and it's worth hearing directly from him before anybody draws their own conclusions.
And how they finna go about this. Now, CBS Sports did release this statement right here.
Back position in today's NFL and what the athlete has to look like and what they're required to do in the pocket. This is no knock against Deshaun Watson, but he's coming off of 2 Achilles surgeries. And we know what he was before he was injured, a great player, a Pro Bowler, kept that Houston Texans team in playoff contention for a couple years in a row. But I just think for Shedeur Sanders, new coaching staff, Todd Monken comes into town. If you can show fairly early in this training camp that you've made a big jump from this year 1 to summer, now into training camp of year 2, and you can show that every time you go in the huddle, you can be the guy, and the other 10 guys in the huddle and can look at you and say, man, I know Shedeur is going to get us in the right spot. I know he's going to go where he's supposed to be with the ball. I think that says a lot in terms of who's going to find their way to QB1. But when I was in Dallas, Mike McCarthy would always say, if you've got 2, you've got none. So the Browns got a couple weeks to figure out who their 1 is going to be, or they might be in the same position this time next year.
You need to hear this next part in his own words because it changes how you look at this whole competition. Todd Monken didn't sidestep the quarterback question when he was asked about it directly. He talked about developing the roster, and he was specific that this applies whether it ends up being Shadur, whether it's Deshaun, or whether it's Dylan Gabriel in that room. That's the job of a first-year head coach walking into a young team. But then he said something that a lot of people are going to want to go back and watch again. He said both Deshaun and Shadur had really good springs. Not one of them, both of them. Think about what that actually means coming from the guy calling the shots. This isn't a coach quietly hoping his declared starter separates himself in OTAs so he can shut the door on the conversation. This is a coach openly saying both of his quarterbacks earned real praise heading into camp. That's not the language of a formality. That's the language of an actual competition, and Monken knows exactly what he's saying when he says it out loud on camera. He kept going, too. Talked about how much he's enjoying the transition into this job, how much this young roster loves to work, and how he genuinely believes it's the right time to be building something in Cleveland. He even brought up the Myles Garrett situation when asked why a coach trades away a player who clearly wanted to win now. And his answer wasn't about this season. It was about 20 years from now, about being the starting point where people look back and ask why every other franchise isn't run the way Cleveland is being run. That's a coach playing the long game, on purpose, out loud in July. And when a coach is thinking in those terms, quarterback competitions don't get decided by reputation or by who was the presumed starter back in April. They get decided by who actually earns it on the field, rep by rep, camp practice by camp practice. That's the environment Shedeur Sanders just walked into on day 1. Not a rigged race, an actual one, with a head coach who's already on record saying both guys earned good marks heading in. So with that context, that this is a real competition and Monken has already said as much publicly, it makes what showed up on day 1 hit even harder. Because Shadur didn't just show up and survive the first day. He showed up and looked like a guy who understands exactly what's being asked of him. And in his own interview, he explained precisely how he's approaching all of this, in his own words, which is worth hearing directly before we get to what it all adds up to.
Browns, because I really believe with the last couple of drafts, we're a young team. I believe that if our job obviously is to develop our younger players, right? And then we're gonna, whether it's Shadur, whether it's Deshaun, or whether it's Dylan, or our quarterback situation, you've got to find a way to right that. And I do think Deshaun and Shadur had really good springs. So I really believe it's no better time than to be the head coach of the Browns.
Here's the reality check nobody's talking about enough. This is coming straight from Shadur himself. In his own interview, Shedeur laid out exactly what's changed for him heading into year 2, and it wasn't about scheme or playbook install. It was about consistency, on and off the field. He said once the season starts, it's autopilot, but the only way you get to autopilot is by building consistency in your personal life first, because whatever's going on off the field is going to bleed directly into how you play. If you're disciplined away from football, you're disciplined on it. You make the right reads, you do the little things right. And if you're carrying distractions around with you, you're going to see a corner backpedaling and read it as something completely different because your head isn't actually in the rep. That's not a rookie talking in cliches. That's a guy who went through a genuinely tough first year and came out the other side with a specific, simplified approach. He said it himself, last year was tough, but looking back, he's grateful he made it all the way through it. And he pointed to the plays he did make, the flashes that showed up even in a difficult season, as proof that ability was never the question. What he's working on now is showing that ability with consistency, week after week, rep after rep, starting on day 1 of this camp. And he said the quiet part out loud, too. He knows what he's capable of when his number gets called. The only thing left is making sure the Browns organization actually calls it. That's not arrogance. That's a guy who's done the internal work, simplified his approach, and is now just waiting for the opportunity to put it on display for everybody to see. So pull all of this together. You've got day 1 tape that had people saying high-level quarterback before camp was even a week old. You've got CBS Sports laying out exactly what it takes to win this job and pointing directly at Shedeur's potential year 1 to year 2 jump. You've got the head coach himself on record saying both quarterbacks had good springs, which means this competition is real and it's not decided. And you've got Shedeur himself explaining that the missing piece wasn't talent, it was consistency, and that's exactly what he's building now. Put that together, and you understand why the doubters went quiet after day 1. Not because anybody handed him anything, because he showed up and did the one thing that shuts down off-season noise faster than anything else. He played like it.
Let's recap where this actually stands, because it's easy to get lost in the noise on social media and lose the real thread. Nobody in Cleveland has named a starter. This is not over, and it's not close to over. Deshaun Watson has real NFL production behind him and a fully guaranteed contract. That means the Browns are not walking away from him lightly. That's the truth, and anybody telling you otherwise is selling you a story, not reporting one. But what day 1 did was reset the framing. Instead of walking into camp with presumed starter versus developmental backup, the actual voices around this team, from a national outlet to the head coach himself, are describing this as an open competition between 2 guys who both had good springs. That's not spin. That's Todd Monken's own words. And Shedeur backed it up on the field on day 1, then backed it up again in his own interview by talking about exactly the kind of consistency that wins these battles over the course of a full camp, not one practice. The next real marker is the preseason. 3 games where reps get counted, decisions get made, and this competition either stays open or starts to close. Until then, day 1 belongs to Shedeur, and it's on tape for anybody who wants to go back and watch it. So here's where I want to know what you think. Do you believe Shedeur Sanders walks out of this training camp as QB1 for the Browns? Or do you think Deshaun Watson's experience and that fully guaranteed contract carry him through the preseason no matter what shows up on tape? Drop your answer in the comments, because I've seen both sides make a real case, and I want to hear where you land. Either way, day 1 is officially in the books, and it did not go the way people expected heading into camp. Todd Monken's already on record, CBS Sports already laid out the path, and Shedeur already showed he heard every bit of it. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens when the pads actually come on. Smash like and subscribe.